All right, thank you everyone for joining us, and happy National Family Caregivers Month. I'm Amanda Dyer, the co-director and producer of the documentary Unseen: How We're Failing Parent Caregivers and Why It Matters. The film explores the challenges faced by parents who are caring for children or adults with disabilities or complex medical needs. We are celebrating National Family Caregivers Month, and we're using that as an opportunity to connect with caregivers and experts about important topics that matter to this community. Today we are talking about reclaiming joy. I think we all know, and as the film explores, that there are so many barriers and challenges that often come with being a caregiver that it's no surprise if you end up in a place where it's hard to find that joy, and find the joy in that experience. But we are going to learn from Shannon and Melissa that it doesn't have to be that way, and there are things you can do to reclaim that joy for yourself. Um, so on that note, let me introduce our panelists here. We have Shannon McGuire and Melissa Nickel, and I will let you all both introduce yourselves if you don't mind.
Yeah, I can jump in. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, or maybe evening. I'm Shannon
Yeah.
McGuire. I'm the founder and lead coach at Supreme Bombs. We are a collaborative organization designed to spread more joy, fun, and love in the world. And puns, acronyms are jams. So joy, just observe you. Fun, feel upbeat now. Love, lift out of victimhood energy. And victimhood, I'll disclaim right away, is not anything about labels or blame or shame. Victimhood is the crappy place we find ourselves in when life doesn't go our way or we're faced with challenges. So it was my own personal experience that has led me to kind of go on a journey to share what has worked for me, not as an answer, this is what you do, but rather a space to start questions for you to consider as to why may you not be in joy? Why might not you be in joy? What's going on? I have four children across two generations. They range from 24, 21, 11, and 6. I'm a grandmother of one. She is 15 months, and it is wild and exciting. I have been a caring bridge builder caregiver for probably all of my life. I go back to being 3 years old and taking care of my brothers, who are 2 years younger, and my cousins. So I've been providing love and support. And most recently, I walked with my dad to his finish line. He passed in February of 2023, where I served as his full-time caregiver. It was such an honorable experience. I am not a parent caregiver of a child with special needs or requirements, but I have many in my circle that are. My experience in particular with my dad and going through that journey of 24/7 care over the course of 7 months and 27 days of my life forever changed me. I appreciate you all, and I love doing this work with spreading joy because I come from some crappy places and I know what it's like to feel lost, confused days and all the things. And I have reclaimed my joy. And we'll talk about that more, but I'm excited to be with you and honored above all. Tag Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa Nickel, and I am excited to be here today. I'm here more as a parent. I have four kids, 13, 9, 9, got a couple of twins in the middle, and 6. And I also have friends who are caregivers, parent caregivers, and one in particular who is my sister and my best friend and my neighbor, who is a full-time caregiver to my nephew. And so I have kind of walked alongside her in her journey. And I'm here because I found Shannon and her tools to be really helpful, and so did my sister. And so I'm excited to share with as many people as we can some of these things that were practical, realistic, and a little bit different than the typical self-care commercialized things that were thrown at us, especially when you're feeling already overwhelmed. So happy to be here.
Thank you all so much for taking time to join. Um, and also, Melissa, shout out to your sister Liz. She was planning on joining us, but in the most relatable caregiver experience of all time, had to be somewhere else during this session. So, hi Liz, and we appreciate I know you guys chatted about some of the background here, and you're bringing that voice to the table as well. All right, so if you're joining us and you have a question, feel free to pop that in the Q&A box. That'll help us just keep track of it there. We'll try to add them in as we go if it makes sense. Or if we have time at the end, we'll try to knock out some then. Also feel free to use the chat if you just want to share thoughts, opinions, or connect with anybody else with us. We're excited to hear from you. All right, so first I want to get you all to tell us a little bit about like this term, even reclaim your joy, comes from a program that you put together. And I want to just give us a little bit of background on that program, just so as people are hearing, kind of these terms and acronyms or, referencing your experience, they'll understand where that's coming from.
Yeah, I will start by saying it really goes back, honestly, to my personal philosophy. So I wrote a memoir a couple years ago, and it was kind of tongue in cheek because I wrote a book that I needed to read and I wanted to read during the tough times. And then I wrote it so my family could read it because I figured, well, if ever there was a time for them to listen to me, if I can get them to sit down and read my life story and see what that's about. And it was through that process of writing and discovery that I started to cement and share the tools that work for me. So, joy is one. Joy is first and foremost an acronym for just observe you, because when you don't feel like you can come to a place of joy, which is very different than happiness, happiness is fleeting, it's tied to circumstances and things, and it's not a bad thing. So, I want to disclaim that. But joy comes from within and saying we can find it at any time. So I started to share joy, and we received a generous grant from a local family foundation here that allowed us to put together a cohort to explore their own power and ability to build their emotional resilience and practice in real time. And we went through this process of a cohort that intended to be 9 months. And it turned out that after 10 weeks, they were like, yo, let's pause. Decadent chocolate cake level material here. I need time and a little more intentionality, if you will, in how this unfolds. So we developed this program, Reclaim Your Joy, as a way to offer to caregivers, caring bridge builders, anyone that is ready to find themselves intentionally placing themselves rather in a space that they feel good about being themselves. Everything we do, the underlying is feel good about being you. I use that as my mom philosophy and raising my children. The best thing that I can do is ensure that they feel good about being themselves through and through, because I found that over my 2 decades of raising children, that when they feel good about being themselves, then they feel good connecting with others, making decisions, expressing themselves. And then when they go out into the world to exchange that value, they're grounded and rooted in just understanding who they truly are. So reclaim your joy is actually also a pun on me reclaiming my story. That's where it really goes. Our everyday stories and beliefs. What do we feel and why? So we'll reference and talk about things that we have 2 free activity sheets to share with you all, because really it's about taking intentional me time. So that's mental, emotional time where it's not self-care and you go get a pedicure and get your hair done. Because for me, that drains me, honestly. Like, I need things to do. I got things to do, but the me time of exploring our thoughts and our feelings. So, joy, just observe you, is our main prompt at Supreme Moms. It is something we constantly talk about and go speak about, share activity sheets around, because it is the most simple start to feeling good about being yourself. First, by awareness, how am I? Just observe you. So, reclaim your joy was first for me, then toward my family, and then I shared it with humanity.
And Melissa, you were in that initial cohort, right?
Yes, I participated in that cohort, and it was really eye-opening because it provided a pause. And in a world where you're caretaking all the time, whether it's many kids or different situations, homeschooling, not homeschooling, everybody's kind of full-time 24/7 busy. And so it provided these mom bite-sized opportunities to pause that I didn't even fully recognize how much I was missing. And I say mom bite-sized because I feel like maybe parent bite-sized is a better term, but I just feel like it's a different level of time and capacity that you have to pause and contemplate. And so it was really helpful to be doing that with other people who were also recognizing this need of feeling overwhelmed all the time or feeling stressed all the time, and also feeling like I don't want to feel like this all the time even if things around me are continuing. And so it was really interesting, and there was a lot of buzzwords flying around all the time: mindfulness, self-care, all these things that kind of felt like one more task or one more feeling of overwhelm. And it wasn't until that program where it really felt like we were able to, like, one step at a time get to that place in a very concrete, clear clear directive way. And we could take the tool and work with it on our own in our own time, middle of night, whatever time it is. For me, it's always after the kids are in bed and I'm sitting there thinking I should be sleeping, but no, because I need this minute. But being able to do it in that way, but then still come together was really helpful. And it was really fun because I was able to, like I said, go through this with my sister. And that was, I think, one of the highest value was having somebody where we're already talking all the time. So it allowed us to kind of shift our conversations and practice things in little bits of time. So
Yeah, awesome. Um, One thing I wanted to get your both your thoughts on first was just like you kind of referenced, caregivers are always getting advice about how to, do self-care, make time for you, all this stuff, and it's often very unattainable or feels unattainable at least. But first, why? And I think I hear as well caregivers talking about, that their responsibilities are just so overwhelming and often uh, someone's life depends on them doing these responsibilities. So there's no world where they can stop doing these things. Um, but that just leaves so little room for, even thinking about reclaiming joy. But first, I'd love to hear you talk about how or why do caregivers deserve joy? I think we a lot of times talk about it even in terms of like, uh, you know, be your best self so that you can take care of someone else, and that's important, obviously. But do caregivers deserve to have joy on their own just because they're a person? Tell us about where your thoughts are on that topic.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, we deserve all the love. We deserve all the care. We deserve to give our best. And caregiving is one of the most difficult spaces to be in because you may be really good at giving, but not receiving. So, deserving to pause and love and take care of you and find joy despite whatever chaos and odds that are stacked against you is so important for you and like you and yourself first and foremost. You are a human and energy being, and depending on where you believe your source is from and where you'll return to, you are this spirit, this whole entity that's here to have this experience. So love, unconditional love, not I'll love myself when I have time or lose weight or they are fine, whatever that may be. That's not like taking time for you despite the world around you is so important. And I personally really do not like two words, advice and opinion. My kids will tell you, particularly my daughter, who's the 24-year-old mom now, when she calls and says, I need your advice, she's like, oh, sorry, insight. So advice for me feels like a vice grip where people are adding it pressure to me to do something. And opinions, I feel like a little voodoo doll where people are sticking me with the things they think I should do. So I walk from a space and place in my heart where I go, I'll share insight on lived experience. I know what it's like to not love myself. I know what it's like to be at the end of my rope and mermaid moment, which for us disclaims deep emotional exploration. I know what it's like to have suicide ideation. I know what it's like to say, kid, I might walk away from my family and all these responsibilities. I know those dark places. And I also know the bliss and the wonder and the joy-filled love that comes from accepting self and going, oh my gosh, this is an honor to be here. But that comes with not just joy from be, again, happy and just have gratitude. It's a deeper place. It's a heart-focused place to go into and say, yes, I deserve. And not I deserve, putting an anger behind it, but an ease, like I deserve a recognition, a remembrance that we are all from love and we all are here to give love. And as caregivers, it's like a little extra boost of who we are as a source of recharge. And feeling good about being me is first and foremost, period. Then the next sentence is then I can feel good giving to and connecting with others because then I can receive from them more healthfully. So caregivers in particular, and this group, parent caregivers, and those that are just in this space, especially 24/7, this is a life that you probably did not know you were signing up for, right? And you come into this space and it's about them, it's about them, it's about them. So if you say self-care, it's commercialized. And we think, well, I have to go take care of my physical body, or I have to buy something consumer based, or someone's telling me how I need to do this or that. I dismiss all of that. And we invite you to go within and consider. I love the word consider. So when I think of, and no disrespect to psychology, sometimes I think it may come across that way. But psychology sometimes focuses us in a space of continuous processing. We have to move through those things. So I think of processing sometimes as your computer, when you just get that color wheel of death and it won't move. We say consider, to observe the stars, to observe, and taking space to consider how you feel. I know I'll use I statements here. For me, it was the very first part of my self-love. I was like, I feel good about me, but about being me was different. I can look at myself third party and go, I feel good about I do, I don't. And giving to others started to deplete me, seeing me and loving me. So not caring for me, I comb my hair, I take care of my hygiene, but my heart work and how I really felt, that was missing. So the self-love and coming from this place of insight. What are my stories and lived experiences? What do I believe to be true? What does it mean for me to feel good? What does that even mean anymore? What do I even want for dinner? I always ask them, what do I want? What do I need? So just coming from this space and going, today we're doing unknownness and uncertainty. I'm walking downstairs and I'm not sure if dad's going to be here today or not. Just those real spaces are the moments where we know we just don't have time to waste. So I encourage that depth of love and building that relationship with self first and foremost, in addition to whatever we consent to giving to others. So I felt like a bit of a ramble. I really hope that was useful.
No, that's exactly where I was going. I think you framed it recently. We were chatting about like take care of me, period. How does that framework fit into
Yeah. So
there?
like take care of me, stop, full stop. Like one of the things we have to coach most in the beginning is our caregivers come and they're like, I'm here because I'm here for them. And we're like, we understand this, but what about you? I'll take care of me once I take care of them. Well, that's part of the challenge. How do you take care of you? And then, the intensity of the differences. I have to be 24/7 care. I can't take time. You got to go pee, right? Like in that space of peeing, for 60 seconds to 180 seconds, you can focus on you. You can just observe you. And I will walk us through a heart focused breathing activity that's super simple. You can regulate your physiological nature within 60 to 180 seconds. There's always time. We don't see it quite often because we're over care and we're rushing. So the period is like, take care of you, love you, give yourself space. What is your me time? And we design our tools to be done incrementally in a matter of minutes, because sometimes you don't have all day long and you're not going to have a time that you can even vacation. So how do you do that? And I see in the chat there's a question about isolation. Fun fact, Boise is the most geographically isolated city in the lower 48. So we know something about isolation. Pun intended, not. I love this question because isolation and going back to the period of taking care of self, there's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. We walk alone. We are alone with our thoughts at any given time, our feelings at any given time. When we express it outwardly, we share it with others, and even what we radiate from our energy, because they can measure our emotions with like 3 feet, up to 3 feet around us, and that's just there. Going within the space of aloneness and taking time to love being with yourself first and foremost. How am I? Can I stay with me and be with me without any other being around me? And then the second part, because our world is so connected digitally, you can find community almost anywhere at any time. And it is so important to be surrounded by like hearts. The ability to take care of self first is about emotional awareness. How am I feeling? And we bring emotions because, fun fact, the heart sends more information to the brain than the brain does to the heart. So the heart is a start. It's the first organ to form for us as humans. It is the emotional imprint of our entire life. So when we are isolated, oftentimes it's an invitation to reconnect with that source, that heart. So finding time and space to say, how am I? Just observe you, to practice intentional love for yourself, and then being willing to find and go out and even digitally, where are those communities that I can connect with? Who are the folks around me? And that's why we've built and started to build and test out our own online digital community because we couldn't find certain spaces. And I've known Melissa, can't believe this, so like 14 years now. I've known Melissa in various capacities. And she was such an encouragement watching her walk through her journey into motherhood, just saying, Melissa, I always have to tag you there. But it's people like her that I love being with. And when you find those people that you connect with or resources, even if it's one way, just invest in you. And it's okay. It may feel selfish, but it is really, really about self-love and taking care of you. And then once you are charged up, it's like filling your cup. We know this. It's like your battery is up. Think of your phone. I'm 100%, or maybe today I can only get to 60. And then who am I inviting in and who am I consenting to be a source of recharge for? So me, period, them. Isolation is an opportunity to go within and say, how do I feel about me? And just sitting with me and my source and where I am. And then how do I walk forward and start to find the community? And this right here, this community, the documentary and what you've done, Amanda, and Unseen has opened up such an opportunity for connection. So yeah, I hope that was
Can
helpful.
I add to that question that was
Yeah,
posted about
please.
community? Because one thing I noticed going through this, well, for one, there is a lack of ability, I think, and community. I am not one who likes social media. I've never liked it. But as experience with caregiving, I have learned to love parts of that because you can connect with people that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise, all across the world. And you can find people who can relate to situations that typically are not easily found near you. And so for finding special Christmas presents or for advocating in policy and all of these reasons, I think there's a lot of value in these online networks and for parents in general. But one thing I noticed after being put in a community where you're talking more about mentally emotional support rather than the doing of parenting, it seems like communities are coming together to do. We're always doing something for someone else, and we're not really talking about the feelings. Occasionally, someone's brave enough to throw it out there, right? Occasionally, you get that post of overwhelm, but there it doesn't necessarily feel safe or private enough to share in great detail. And even if you are talking with someone one-on-one, maybe you have a counselor or something, you're still kind of isolated in this, like working through these emotions and feelings. So I think there's a lot of value and possibility that I hope to see more groups where it's kind of the being together more than always the doing. And that was one thing we experienced with this. It was kind of like instead of focusing on parenting, because there's all like to Shannon's point, advice is everywhere about parenting and how you should handle things, how you should address things. It's a constant noise, constant from all different angles. And I think being able to connect with other people who maybe don't have the exact same experience, but have the same feelings. Because with caregiving, parenting, there's so much crossover with just how people feel through different stages or feel or different experiences that you have with your kids. Um, and so that was really valuable to me. And I think that what you're posing is a perfect question. And it does need to be asked more because there are a lot of people who are isolated. And if we could create more communities where people can come together and maybe not for long periods of time because nobody has that, right? But when you can jump on for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and you know there's a group out there that is jumping on to practice and discuss these things, these tools of how do we re-identify what self-care is to us. I mean, the first step was really just redefining that. That was the first step for us is instead of the me time, I mean, the self-care, the me time, all these words are overwhelming. And it feels like I said, one more thing that you didn't get to on your to-do list. But once we started re-identifying what it was to us, my sister and I both stood back and we were like, we are doing things, and it was like you could kind of focus on the little things you were doing. Because for me, it's not recharging to go out on a Friday night. I'm completely drained. I don't want to do that. But just as a small example, or maybe Amanda had mentioned she loves cooking dinner, doesn't necessarily maybe love cleaning it up, but like there are certain things that other people would not define as self-care to you. And even just have a cup of coffee in the morning, once we started talking about that, it was like it grew. These little teeny things were able to compound on each other. And then it felt successful. And so I think there's a lot of value in having a community. And it is hard to be on your own with your own thoughts all the time, especially when they're racing and you're overwhelmed because of that spiral feel. So I did love having this community. I would love to see it grow, and I would love to see not just ours, but like other communities coming together with this concept of how do we talk about not just the doing, but the feelings behind why we're seeking this support in the first place. So sorry, that was an
Yeah,
aside, but
no, that was
it's a
perfect.
great question.
Great.
And I feel like there needs to be a spotlight on that exact question.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think hang in there too, because we're gonna get into some more very specific like strategies and practical things you can do that help you pursue joy in your reality, whatever that looks like too. Um, One thing I hear all the time in our conversations with caregivers is that feeling of, I didn't necessarily choose this role. Like, no, if you're, finding yourself there, in many cases you didn't necessarily choose it. It doesn't mean you don't want it, but it just means you didn't have a choice in the matter, and that can make people feel, like I don't have control of this situation and make it more challenging to find the positive aspects of. Can you talk about that? How that feeling of not having control impacts your joy?
Yeah, I'll start with the word power. We define power as the ability to make decisions for yourself and sometimes others. And when we feel out of control, when we feel that we didn't choose this, I got something that I did not want, then that's where we start to emotionally spiral. That's when we start to go into the headspace. Power is always available to us. And it took me a while to figure this out. So quick story, I moved to Idaho about 16 and a half years ago from Los Angeles, the area, California. So I went from one of the most populated areas to one of the most isolated areas. I didn't think of it at the time. I knew the numbers, but I wasn't consciously thinking about all these things. I landed here, felt like it was a Bob Ross painting, was like, this feels great. We're moving. Let's go. You know, so I love Bob Ross. Um, and so when I did that, I had no clue what it was going to open up. And I used to call it a midlife crisis, but I've since reframed it to a quarter life crisis because I was 25 at the time. Brain was coming into full formation. I lost my crap. I didn't know who I was. I went through an emotional mental breakdown to break through. And it was in that space of discovery that I started to go, the stories that I was holding on to about it wasn't me, it was them. I didn't want this, but it happened. All of those explorations were laid bare. I come from a high ACE environment, adverse childhood experiences, adverse community environment. I have had a lot of trauma. And it wasn't until I reframed it and started to look at the wounds that I encountered. Instead of it being traumatic experiences that I can't revisit, that I can't go to unless I have professional help, sometimes that's necessary. When I started to look at those things as, wait a minute, that storyline, my brother passed away when I was 9 years old. I got blamed for it by some community members. I had to reframe that story and go, it wasn't the act of what happened as much as what does it mean to me? Meaning is so important. M-E, meaning. And there are a number of things that we go through in life that we would not actively choose, consciously choose. So then that is what starts the motion of maybe our consent being violated. And we truly have been victimized and a victim to something. When our consent violated, there's something that happened to us unexpectedly. There's the other side of it, of the crossroad of, I just found out this pregnancy is dire. My child is going to have some complications. I can't go back. I don't want to go back, but I'm scared to go forward. That is still choice. And the hard part is understanding that we are consenting, we are deciding, we have power. What does it mean? We can spend a lot of our time complaining and blaming. And I did that. I did that for so long, the complaining and blaming. And once I learned that that energy that I was putting out, that negative energy was literally draining my life force, it started to reframe it for me. And more importantly than that, the meaning to my life. And how do I honor me first and foremost? The script that I was handed, I go, hey, I can improvise. I can feel differently about something and believe something differently. So it's hard. It is incredibly hard. There are things that you all on this call have gone through that I haven't, and vice versa. There's things that I've gone through and you haven't. The storyline in the script, to me, is most potent when I look at the character and what meaning am I bringing to the story of my life? What meaning is behind me being a caregiver? If I'm a 24/7 caregiver and I didn't set out to do this in this game of life, then why did it happen? And the energy we put behind it. Why did this happen to me versus why would I choose this on a higher level? Or what is the best that I can make of this situation? What am I here to do? What am I really here to give? And in the chaos and the potential feelings of burden, I know there's times we all want to tap out. We probably do. I fired myself throughout the pandemic constantly. I was like, I'm not a mom. Y'all figure it out. I'm not a wife. That's on y'all. I'm not doing it. And I come back. I even divorced my husband for the day. Those are good, by the way. Just divorce for the day. Then, you can get through it, reset that energy. But I consciously try to ensure that I am mindful of the consents that I bring. And instead of me blaming and shaming myself or others, I explore those deeper emotions and go, why? I feel hurt. I feel like this isn't fair. It should be easier, all the things. Like, why did this have to happen to me? And instead of just asking the question, I decided to start answering them. And it was wild because they've unfolded over the course of the last 14 years of my life. So I will tell you that while you may feel like you didn't choose this, that is a great opportunity for you to explore what you believe about your source, not just religion. I'm talking from the perspective of energetic formation. Where did you come from? Not just your parents, but like, why do we even exist and where are we returning to? And starting in that space and thinking about free will, unconditional love, and from a higher perspective, if you knew you wrote this life story, why would you have chosen this? And you may not get to that place where you can answer it right away. For me, it became, oh my gosh, if I die at the end of my life, I think it's a surprise party that happens, by the way. All these people show up and they're like, what's up? Welcome. I'm like, hey, what's up? And then sit down and watch the movie of my life. I would want to watch something that had highs and lows and ups and downs. The best movies take us through so much. If it was all good at all time, we wouldn't do it. So for me, I had to come back to a place and put meaning to my life. The best thing I did to reclaim my joy was to reclaim my story and reclaim my beliefs and define things on my terms. And I feel like that has transformed me. And when I coach and guide others, that's where I take them. It's not about the answers I have. If you ask me a question, I'm gonna ask it back to you. Why did this happen? Why do you think it happened? Because that's what matters. It's that space. That's the intentionality that we're getting to. The question that comes, answer it. I didn't have a choice. I feel, why? Just observe you. What emotion is there? There's anger. There's fear. So that's the space of, that's a version of reclaiming your joy. Reclaim your observation of yourself, your story, your beliefs, because we need you. I'll say one of the most important things for me pre-pandemic was investing in our caregivers, because when our caregivers are not best supported and they're not there and they may find themselves drained and depleted, we are FUCD. We are fear, uncertainty, chaos, division. We're screwed. We're screwed. If our caregivers give up and burn out, they're a first and last line of defense. First and last line. So sometimes I bring an urgency and I bring an intensity. Like, we don't have time to be playing games, y'all. This is life and death. So what do you believe and why, and how do we walk forward? And then sometimes I have to back it up because I come from an intense environment. I talk loud, my family's loud, and the compassion is always there, y'all. compassion for self first. And you didn't do anything wrong. Don't think about what you did wrong to create this. No, no. Think of it differently. Wow, this is honorable. This is human life that I'm caring for. How do I walk forward? That's what I had. Those are conversations I had to have with me. And then finding the people and community I could turn outward and have those conversations with. And to Melissa's point, the being instead of the doing, but being just and not becoming. Sometimes becoming feels daunting. I have to do this to get there. No, being in the moment now. So I really hope that was helpful. And I say that with so much grace and love. So I hope no one feels like you're pointing the finger at me. Like, I love you. I don't know you, but guess what? I love you because we're shared and we're walking this journey together. So from the heart.
No, I know there's so many nuggets in there. I feel like I just need to scribble them, scribble them down to take note of all of them.
You recorded this.
Yes, good
Yes.
point. We can go back. And Melissa, do you have any perspective to add there on, the idea that you didn't necessarily choose the role, but I think we talked about it in terms of like you're consenting to how you show up as the parent or as the caregiver. What does that look like kind of from your seat?
I would just add that for me, going through and kind of, first of all, the storytelling of your own self, I think is really valuable. And I've always kind of been a journaler when I had the time, and I've come and gone from it depending on where the kids were at and age and everything. But um, actually sitting down and really focusing on the peaks and the valleys of life up to this point, even if just for a few moments, just answering some simple questions about things that really felt like really horrible points in your life, and reframing it or looking at it as like, wow, I've conquered these things, rather than trying to kind of put it in the past. I know that was one thing that my sister and I really found value in, was not recognizing until we paused how much we were kind of just brushing off, or just not allowing, if that makes sense, for lack of a better word, with feelings. Because I think there are a lot of feelings that maybe you don't necessarily even want, or you don't want to admit, but they're there and they're real and they're human. And I think being able to pause and acknowledge them, even if just for a moment, is so helpful. And it was something I couldn't do, and I'm still practicing. I just wanted everything to be fine. So it was just, but then I would get to this point of like eruption or something. And it's just like, that is not helpful. But it is hard to pause and feel like that's worthy of pause. And there was somebody that I saw present recently, and I come from like this long line of like high achiever strength people, and she did as well. And in this presentation, she said, I did something no one else could do. I stopped. And I thought, wow, now that's powerful, because it kind of, it reframes it. You're not pause, like it's a strength to pause. It's a strength to allow. It's a strength to accept. And it's a strength to pause and look at things that were so challenging and reframe it for yourself. And not all the time, because we don't have time to just sit around and think about everything all the time, clearly. I mean, this is probably a huge
I can
time
hear it now.
commitment for
When
everyone
do
on the call.
when do I call? Yeah.
Yeah. So not all the time, but it does need to happen, and however often you needs to be identified. But so I think the storytelling, I just wanted to add that it's a simple activity that you can do without even sitting down. I mean, you can just think about it throughout the day, maybe. And it allows you to reframe and take that power from giving it to all these external factors and really putting it within yourself and seeing things differently. Things that I thought were weaknesses, really were strengths, maybe out of control strengths sometimes, like to letting them take free reign, so they can become your weakness. But being able to redefine that was really valuable.
What about us getting kind of into the last quarter here? I think we hinted at this a little bit, but this idea that figuring out what creates joy for you and what recharges you versus what drains you is really central to this whole exercise. So could you tell us a little bit about what that means, like drainer versus recharger, and how that factors in here?
Yeah, so we have two activity sheets we'll share, and this is just an example of how we approach our work. So the first activity sheet is about joy, and it describes just observe you and how to practice. And because we don't have, the luxury of just sitting around and thinking and doing, it's on the go. So when you were brushing your teeth, just observe you. When you were showering and bathing, just observe you. When you are using the bathroom, just observe you. When you are in the heat of the moment and you are overwhelmed, just observe you. So the power of that at any given time. The second sheet, rechargers versus drain, are the ways in which you can identify. This takes a little more intentional focus. And this is imperative. A big part of why we create activity sheets is to focus the brain and the attention while allowing space to drop into the heart. The heart is one of the most ignored spaces because it is one of the most painful. It's the repository of everything we've ever experienced and felt, even her mother, like the uterus we incubated in. The mother wound is real. That's a whole other topic for a whole other day. But the emotional imprint that we had since conception carries through us. We are battling things that didn't start with us. Recharge versus drain is an opportunity to sit down and think about the things that are bringing you joy, that are filling you up, powering you, versus the things that are draining you, that are depleting you and taking you down. Simply, I like to look at it from an emotional standpoint because it helps me understand the human journey we're all walking. So, recharging emotions, joy, fun, and love, things within that nature. And things that are draining, fear, anger, disgust, sadness, and schadenfreude, deriding joy off another's misery, deriving joy off another's misery. And rage, which resentment is the gateway. That's the one that got me. I was like, I'm not a resentful person. Yes, you were. Once I laid that bare, I erupted because, that's the thing. And then in our language, rage and FUCD, fear, uncertainty, chaos, division, that's the victimhood energy. That's where I have a whole little house and a dwelling. I'm on a whole little victimhood island in my resentment zone, and I don't want to be bothered. And I might show up, but I'm not doing it with joy, fun, and love. And I might not even know it because it's the place that I've gone to uh, maybe protect myself, and I'm
Yeah, it's a safe
drained.
place.
Totally. It's like, I
Hmm.
don't tell me I'm sitting in this crap pit. I don't smell anything. I smell it, but I don't. So recharges versus drain is just a way to understand your energy expenditure. Where are your emotions? What's bringing you joy? What's bringing you chaos? What activities are your strengths? And you don't have to have any special assessment to identify your strength. But if you did take one, I recommend you go take the Clifton Strengths because that one was just helpful in the language and how it explained things. And I know that I'm good at relationship building. I know it's a strength, but it also simultaneously can be a source of drain. Our strength overused will drain us. You may be the best person at cooking meals, but then at some point in time, no one else is going to want to cook because they say you do it best, and then it can deplete you. So it's just this awareness of where is power, what is, and where and what is powering you up and what's bringing you down. Activities, people, things,
Mhm.
and it's it gets real. You get as real as you want. So these two activity sheets are just a snippet of what the whole program was. But to Melissa's point, you have the opportunity to sit with this, go at your pace, go to the depth that you desire, but it's asking yourself and answering those questions. We're just giving you the framework, but asking and answering yourself these questions. And that's the me time. That's taking the time to really clean and clear up your emotional energy. So those are two activity sheets that we are so excited to share with you. And
And
again, you can do it anytime.
mhm. We put it in the chat, and then if you're watching later, we'll link it in the comments or in on the page that you're on, so you can find them there as well. And you can also find them at you want to say the website address?
Yeah, suprememoms.com slash joy dash offerings. But if you go to our homepage, suprememoms.com, and you click that learn more where you say, Moms, you help others. What about you? It's going to take you to the joy offering page, which is kind of like a choose your own adventure. There's the free sheet that we're dropping here that you can download. We ask you exchange an email address just because, bots do exist. And then you will find on that page my memoir if you're interested in exploring your story in connection to mine. That's really how I approach that book. It's like I shared my journal. And even if our stories are different, you'll recognize the feelings. And so we have one of the things I do want to plug is our universe. That's our online community. We took the time to build that with our inner circle and network of trying to test something out. And we feel like we're grown up enough to start to extend that to others. And in that space in the universe, I think we've marked it at $14.99 a month, which is cool because you can try and be like, no, this isn't for me. But there's a slew of tools like these two worksheets. There's a community of people and coaches and guides there to engage with you and answer questions and be a support for you. So that would be the one that I highly recommend for this group because we're building community. We started with, I think there was like 5 of us and then 10, and I don't know how many are in there, but we're reamping this up because, things did change this week and it hasn't been as pleasant for most of us. So we're going to need each other more than ever. So on that page, you'll find options for you to reclaim your joy. And I do want to say that if finances are an issue, you can reach out to us at recharge@suprememoms.com and tell us your situation and how we might be able to support you. So we're walking forward. Look at us. We're like toddlers.
Action items. No, I love that. It's speaks to Melissa's point earlier about communities where you can just be and not a community where you have to do all the time. So I think that that's a great resource for folks. Um, Melissa, will you tell us real quick too? While we're on the topic of the drainers and rechargers, I really liked the example you gave when we were chatting before, just about like the conventional wisdom was you need a break from your kids, and you found that not really working for you. Could you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, that I would say that was one of the biggest drainers when I became a mother, is I was told all the time what I needed for me. And I didn't really have the ability at the time to stand back and really listen to myself and my own instincts of what I needed. But after going through this practice, and it took me a while, this wasn't like a worksheet I filled out in a few minutes. This was a worksheet that I sat on my counter and I would, throughout my day for a couple weeks, really pay attention to it. I was really focusing on my moods and what was stressful. And there are surveys out there, that one that we kind of supported, that talk about moms and the fact that they don't, like 87% or something, say they don't feel comfortable asking for help. For me, some of that is I don't know what to ask for because the common offerings for help are not helpful. And I know that that's similar with my sister in the caregiving group, or the kind of help you need doesn't exist, right? It's not an
Yeah,
easy
so
thing to
relatable
get
for.
help for. And so by going through this activity, though, it is kind of interesting, or was to me, finding out not only what was draining and recharging me, which was very different for myself than what other people had been telling me, but also allowed me to identify in those areas of drain things I could ask for help. And so it made asking for help a little bit easier because I could identify where maybe a little bit of help in this one really draining area then makes everything else easier. Because people are always saying, how can I help? What can I do? Well, I'm too busy to figure this out for you. I'm too overwhelmed to tell you how to help me, or I can't train you on this. There's a lot of times where, there's just a lot of things that it takes more work to have someone help you than to do it yourself. And so that's something else I would just say to keep in mind as you're working through the strengths and the recharge and drainers, excuse me. Because it is an important activity that we should be doing all the time, not just as a caregiver, a parent, to your point, but just as a person. Where should I be? Where should I be spending more time, less time? Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally. Like, what are things I need to stop overthinking because it's such a drain? Maybe then you can be more purposeful or intentional in limiting the amount of time in those spaces. So it was helpful, but it's not like an overnight thing. It's not like, oh, this is going to fix everything. It's
You mean these
something I'm
worksheets
constantly
won't solve
doing.
all your
What's that?
problems? These worksheets won't solve all your problems in 5 minutes? What?
Yeah, no, but it is
Yeah.
nice to
But
just
it's a
have the
starting point. Yeah.
conversation and to have it as a on the front of my mind all the time. And if I forget or I start feeling overwhelmed, then it's like a reminder to pause and reevaluate what's going on throughout the day. Um, so I would say there's power in the pause. There's power in the pause.
Yes.
I would just want to say that to everybody on this call. And anyways, I hope
Yeah,
that
Yeah,
no, I
I
think
love
that's
that.
so helpful. Yeah, nothing's going to be magic wand solution like we've talked about before, but it's just that maybe there's something on the sheet that just makes you think in a way you hadn't thought about before, or a little piece of, wait, what's the word? Not advice, but
Insight.
insight, an
insight.
insight that you
Yes.
can take with you that, gets kind of in your mind and comes up when you need it. So I think all these are kind of things you can collect that can come in handy when you most need them. One more thing, I know we're getting low on time, but one thing I wanted to bring up just kind of on behalf of a lot of the caregivers that we hear from is, there's a lot to trying, finding that peace and joy in the day to day. But there can really be a lot of those questions about the long term, what's going to happen to my child long term? What's going to happen when I can't provide care anymore? What's their future look like? Like all these questions that feel like these really huge question marks in life. Um, how do you frame those kind of things that feel very daunting just all the time?
Yeah, you're gonna get tired of hearing me saying it. I come back to joy and I just observe you. I just observe myself and go, what am I feeling about it? And then I treat it as a summit, right? Because or sometimes a sewer that you actively are going into. Because with those longer term things, there's so much uncertainty, right? There is not much we know, except we know memento mori, we will die one day. And that is sometimes a scary place to even think about because it brings up a host of emotions and feelings we don't want to work through. But first and foremost, focusing on how you are feeling about it. Just observe you. And then second is plan for what you can and be ready to react to when necessary the things that you have to. And facing it is often and head on as you can, whatever that is. When I was going through the caregiving experience with my dad, I walked it in some ways alone, right? Because we walk alone in general. I was left alone with my own thoughts and my feelings, but I was also in the space of my dad going, I want you to be my voice. And how do you work through this situation? So from power of attorney and all these other things and funeral home, all these big things that you're like, I don't want to think about this. And that was different because I knew that there was a finish line. And in that way, and this was my father. Well, when it comes to your child or someone else, and you go, well, they're supposed to outlive me. What am I going to do with that? Just acknowledging that and starting there and acknowledging that and coming to a place eventually of peace as much as you can, peace and serenity around the things that you cannot change. And then planning for and going, how do I not approach this with naivete? What do I need to do? So I'm big on writing things down and just going, I need to answer this question and that question and this. And then there's the resources, right? Of I probably can't afford the thing that I really want to do. How? And it's asking yourself those questions and then answering them and being willing to face those summits and sewers of not only emotion, but obstacles and challenges that are going to come your way, the unexpected. And what is the long term plan for those that I love in the event of my demise? We don't often like to go there. And it's just the acknowledging of that is the first step. And then the questions that come to mind, the things that you are not aware of, get answers. And then doing as best as you can. I come from a culture and an environment where from jump, I knew the systems I was born into weren't designed for me. And that is a whole host of reasons. You can go race, religion, creed, sex, orientation, all of it, right? There's always something. But there's systems that just don't work. And instead of me trying to fix them and figure it out from the earliest ages, we figured out how to get around, go through, and build our own subsystems. And one of the hardest things that I had to face was like, yo, no one's coming to save me. They sold me a lie with Superman and fairy tales and shit. Ain't no Prince Charming coming my way. So just acknowledging that the conscious control and power that I have to make decisions is where it starts. Being willing to face the things that scare me the things that give me pause, the things that I want to bury. And just knowing that it's a summit, it's a sewer. There's highs, there's lows, there's recharge, there's drain. And coming back to that meaning for you in your life and getting to a place where you have inner ease, compassion for yourself, and take these obstacles that come your way as an opportunity to continue to overcome. And when you're tired, rest. And when you need support, lean, ask, and above all, stand in what you believe about your life and your journey. But there's so much that we face. The emotions and the feelings are 99% the same. And fear escalated into terror about what could happen is one of the biggest drains on our energy. So planning for what you can and being able to react from a place of grace when it shows up, I think is most important.
Thank you for that. All right, we are out of time. Any final words or anything you want to share
So
to
really
leave
quick, I
folks with?
want to share a tool, heart
Okay.
focused breathing. Heart focused breathing, you can do it anytime, anytime. So it goes this way. You're going to focus your attention on the area of your heart. And if it helps, touch your heart. Imagine your breath flowing in and out of your heart. So as you breathe in and out, imagine that breath is coming through the heart. Breathe a little slower and deeper than usual. Maybe 5 in, 5 out, with the focus remaining on your heart. That practice over 6 to 9 weeks has shown to reduce anxiety, depression, increase your ability to sleep, all the things, because it puts us back in our parasympathetic and our physiological nature resets. Above all, at any time when you are in the throes of shit challenges or when you are in the bed at night before you close your eyes, anytime during the day, heart focused breathing. That is one of the most immediate ways to reset your system.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll take that one with us for sure. Melissa, any closing words?
I just
Sorry, I don't
want
want
to
to put you on the
say,
spot.
no, I just want to say love to all the caregivers because I just am what you do is so valuable and the love that you give is amazing. And I just love that you have a community here of unseen that hopefully feels so. Thanks for letting me come.
Thank you. And thank you, Amanda. And thank you, Ashley. Thank you for elevating this much needed conversation. You are so appreciated.
Oh, thank you all so much for joining us. I know this it is really near and dear to our hearts that caregivers feel seen, feel heard, and get practical resources that they can use to, change that story and have a positive story, and for whether that's for themselves or the people in their circle that they're caring for. So we really appreciate your time, and everyone check out suprememoms.com/joy-offerings or just the homepage there, and you'll find all kinds of resources. We hope you take advantage of those. Thank you all.
Thank you.